Well, guys, finally it arrived. The sequel to the most important book of the decade, at least for Indians and Bharatiyas, has arrived. The book by Sai Deepak. It's called India, Bharat, Pakistan. Let's unbox it and let's see what are the contents, the chapter names, etc. And I'll give my takes on my initial thoughts on what the structure of the contents seem like. Yes, it's coming out. It looks beautiful. And Bloomsbury really knows how to make a book, how to give it. Oh, what a beautiful book. I love this. And first thing I expect from Bloomsbury is that it should smell like exactly the Harry Potter books, just like the India That Is Bharat, the first book, smelled exactly like the Harry Potter books. I just need some reminder of my childhood. Somehow this illustration and this cover, the lettering looks even more beautiful than the first book. I don't know how or why. So beautiful. Look at this book. Look at it. This is so nice. Okay, so India, Bharat and Pakistan, the constitutional journey of a sandwiched civilization. Sai Deepak, Bloomsbury. So who are the people who have given some compliments at the back? Open has said, the publication of this book, together with the promise of the upcoming sequels to it, herald a ripening of the Indic civilizational discourse from a previous stage that was largely characterized by the broadcasting of emotional outbursts and poorly informed opinions on the social media. What a beautiful thing to say. This is so right. When future generations of historians chronicle the development of the reawakening of our civilization through time, they will find it difficult not to recognize the significant role that this book plays in that reawakening. I would say this book and its sequel is the thing that has started this all, especially in my generation. At least to be more a little petty and simplistic, at least among the English-speaking generation, this book seems to be it. Among people who are under 35. The Hindu Business Line says, Deepak disproves the argument that India as a nation-state did not exist before the mutiny of 1857. This is very true since as early as the Mauryan period, India stretched from Afghanistan to South India. He states that nobody can argue against the religious inspirations for Columbus's missions and the British government's inclusion of missionary ideas into Indian society. His arguments about the existence and therefore pending reclamation of the indigenous consciousness of an Indic civilization are appealing in terms of ideas. First Post. First Post is the online portal where Sai Deepak initially started writing some articles. He wrote about 18 to 20 articles and then he decided that okay, now he has the skills to write an entire book. First Post says, in India That Is Bharat, Deepak explores the underpinnings of the idea of Bharat by first travelling into history to excavate the corrosion of the idea, then as lawyers do, offering evidence of its sustenance and subsequently paving the way for a decolonized interpretation of the constitution. Prosenjit K. Basu, a Bengali, says, who is an economist, historian and author of the award-winning book Asia Reborn. This is a seminal, path-breaking book that is bound to transform the conversation about the profound impact of coloniality on India's constitution and cultural discourse. Introducing the term coloniality into India's conversation is itself a crucial contribution of this book, which it is. And like the first book, I jokingly always tell my friends that this book, especially the first one, is a weapon. This book is equivalent to Sitaram Goel's books on history and Dr. Thomas Sowell's books on economics. You read these books and you'll never lose an argument or debate ever again once in your lifetime. And this is weapon even in the physical sense. This is a hardcover. You throw it at someone and they'll probably land in a coma. But even metaphorically, this book is the weapon you need. See, how much are you going to achieve with street power? It's great for saving your life once or twice when the riots happen. But street power comes and goes. All political parties have street power. The one thing that we don't have is this weapon. or the skills to express our opinions, even if we have the opinions. So the skills is what it is. This is equivalent to you going to the gym and training in a martial art mentally. Let's see what's inside. Okay, on the left it says it's a basic gist. Okay, let's give that as well. India, Bharat and Pakistan. The second book of the Bharat trilogy takes the discussion forward from its best-selling predecessor, India, that is Bharat. It explores the combined influence of European and Middle Eastern colonialities on Bharat as the successor state to the Indic civilization, and on the origins of the Indian constitution. And I might be wrong, but I think this is the first book in the world to talk about Middle Eastern coloniality. To this end, the book traces the thought continuum of Middle Eastern coloniality from the rise of Islamic revivalism in the 1740s, following the decline of the Mughal Empire, which presaged the idea of Pakistan until the end of the Khilafat movement in 1924, which cemented the road to Pakistan. The book also describes the collaboration of convenience that was forged between the proponents of Middle Eastern coloniality and the British colonial establishment to the detriment of the Indic civilization. One of the objectives of this book is to help the reader draw parallels between the challenges faced by the Indic civilization in the tumultuous period from 1740 to 1924 and the present day. Its larger goal remains the same as that of the first, which is to enthuse Bharatiyas to undertake a critical decolonial study of Bharat's history, especially in the context of the constitution, so that the religiosity towards the document is moderated by a sense of proportion, perspective and purpose. Now, let me give you an example of Middle Eastern coloniality in Bengalis. So, Bengal has been for the large part in the last few hundred years been under some Islamic ruler or the other. So we have a term called, there are plenty of examples like this, that how fear of Muslim rulers is ingrained in us. One of that is we have a term called lok lashkar. We say that phrase to describe a crowd, a gathering. And let's say we mean that a crowd is going to come and we say lok lashkar chole ashbe. Remember what the fuck the word lashkar means. You need to read his earlier book, his previous book, or Sanjay Dikshit's book on what Lashkar is, and you know what Lashkar-e-Taiba is. They are Afghani Islamic warring tribes who descended upon Kashmir in 1947 and laid siege, created utter hell. They were asked to run to Delhi and capture some more land, but they were so busy raping in Kashmir that they forgot that job. So Bengalis have that civilizational memory of the term Lashkar, that it's something vicious, a vicious group of people is called Lashkar. And also remember, there's another example of Middle Eastern coloniality that is even in the Hindi speakers, that is the use of the phrase Jahil Gawar, which we mean for people who are ignorant. But remember that Jahiliya is the age of ignorance according to Islamic terms. It means people who are not Muslim, to whom the wisdom or the light of Islam has not reached. So when we say Jahil and when they say Jahil, it's not the same thing. They mean a Hindu is Jahil because he's not Muslim, because he does not have the wisdom that Islam brings to you. The first page says India, Bharat and Pakistan. The second page gives the entire name, The Constitutional Journey of a Sandwiched Civilization. And there's a beautiful dedication for Amma, Appa, Akshara and Prasad. Okay, now it starts with some quotes from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It says, "In the beginning, before creation, this, the whole cosmos, was all indeed Brahman, the one and only. Being the only one, he could not scaffold the cosmos. He created, further, an excellent form, Kshatriyahood. Those Kshatriyas, or rulers among the gods, Indra, Varuna, Soma, Rudra, Parjanya, Yama, Mrityu and Isana. Therefore, there is none higher than Kshatriyahood. Hence, the Brahmana upholds the Kshatriya from a lower position in the Rajasuya sacrifice. He imparts that glory to the Kshatriya. The Brahmana is the source of the Kshatriya. Therefore, although the king attains supremacy in the sacrifice, at the end of it, he resorts to the Brahmana, his source. He who destroys the Brahmana strikes at his own source. He becomes more wicked, as one is by destroying the enlightened. Another quote from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. This is in Sanskrit, I can't read it. Its translation, I guess, is this. Yeah. Yet Brahman could not scaffold the cosmos. He further created Vaishyas, which are called Ganasa, the species of gods who are designated in groups. The 8 Vasus, 11 Rudras, 12 Adityas, 13 Visvadevas, and 49 Maruts. Yet Brahman could not scaffold the cosmos. It's another quote. He further created Shudra Varna, Pusan. This earth is Pusan, for it nourishes all this that exists. And in the last it says, yet Brahman could not scaffold the cosmos as he was doubtful about controlling the ferocious Kshatriya. He further created Dharma. This Dharma is the controller of Kshatriya. Hence, there is nothing greater than Dharma. See, based on what I've read about Indic philosophy so far, which is mostly from Aurobindo's book, The Life Divine, and based on what I've heard people say, I've understood that right now the need of the hour is that people need to be all the 4 things. You need to be a Brahmana. You need to think and act like a Brahman so that you can win debates. You need to be a Kshatriya so that you can fight back when someone tries to set your house in fire. You need to be a Vaishya because without Artha there can be no Dharma. So you need to have your profession and monetary gains set in place. And you need to be a Shudra in your home. You need to always keep your house clean and do the jobs, the mundane daily jobs that help you survive. The chapters are section 1, which is 1740 to 1898. The first part of the section 1 is the seeds of Pakistan. Inside that, the chapters are the fall of the Mughal Empire and the rise of pan-Islamic movements in Bharat. Then there's a chapter on Sayyid Ahmed Shahid Barelvi. Then growth of the Wahhabi movement after Barelvi. The next subchapter is exposure of the Wahhabi network and the law of sedition. The next chapter is the Ahle Hadith, Deobandi, Barelvi, Nadwa and Aligarh movements. The next subchapter is some thoughts on the ideology of pan-Islamic movements in the subcontinent. Then the second part of the section 1 is Sayyid Ahmed Khan, the Aligarh movement and the two-nation theory. The subchapters under that are origins and early influences, then rebellion, reformation and reincarnation, and then specifically Aligarh, then the two-nation theory, then Sayyid Jamal al-Din al-Afghani, Ummah and the Caliphate. Then section 2 starts. Section 2 is 1899 to 1909. It starts with the subchapter The Partition of Bengal. Then the story of moderate nationalism, Muslim nationalism and electoral separatism. Among that, the subchapters are reactions to the partition of Bengal, the colonial origins of the Indian National Congress and its moderate nationalism. I'm going to love this chapter. Growth of extremist nationalism within the Indian National Congress and a divided Congress, the Shimla Deputation, the All India Muslim League and the Minto-Morley reforms. Then another subsection begins, the Indian Councils Act of 1909, yet another ad hoc safety valve. Among that, the subchapters are the purge of the nationalists, a rising league and the revolutionaries. Then the debates on the Indian Councils Act of 1909. Now section 3, 1910 to 1924. It starts with a subchapter Reunification of Bengal, the First World War and the Lucknow Pact, Murmurings of Khilafat, which was 1910 to 1916. Inside that there are subchapters called Annulment of the Partition of Bengal and Muslim Displeasure, then A Troubled Ummah, the First World War and the Lucknow Pact. Then a larger subchapter begins in the section 3, From the Home Rule Movement to Rumblings of Khilafat. And inside that is the Montfort Report and reactions to it. After that begins the subsection Gandhi, Rowlatt, Government of India Act of 1919, Khilafat and Non-Cooperation 1919 to 1924. Inside that, the subchapters are the Rowlatt Act and the Jallianwala Bagh Massacre, the Government of India Act of 1919, the Khilafat movement until December 1918, a summary, the Khilafat agitation and the non-cooperation movement from 1919 to 1920, Then Hindu Musalman Ki Jai, an uneasy and short-lived bonhomie. That was 1921 to 22. Then the last gaps of the Khilafat agitation and of Hindu Musalman Ki Jai, 1923 to January 1923 to December 1924. Then the subsection called Malegaon, Malabar, Gulbara and Kohat, the two-nation theory in action. Inside that, the subchapters are Malegaon, Gulbarga and Kohat, one subchapter. Then the Mopla outrage of 1921 to 1922, peasant rebellion or Hindu genocide. Then a short history of fanaticism in the Malabar until 1921. Then the Khilafat and the Mopla outrage of 1921. Then legislative debates on the Mopla outrage. Then reactions in the public domain to the Mopla outrage. And then a conclusion and then the appendix. And acknowledgements start. Let's see, is there any foreword? Introduction, okay, no foreword yet. Interesting. And in this topic, so far, I think the best and only book has been explaining the history of partition and what the things that led to it, has been the book by Sanjay Dikshit. And only this book is probably going to be the most elaborate and decisive and seminal work on this topic. So please read the first book if you haven't already, and then buy this book and read this as soon as possible. And remember, you need to read this because you are from this country, and you need to read this if you're outside of this country. You need to know how the world was and what things lead to what things. Don't be in under any misconception like the people have been until this time. And I forgot to mention one other point, that this book is obviously looks bigger than the first book, but it's about 250 pages longer than the first book, but also it has shorter fonts than the first book. So imagine the amount of hard work and dedication and focus he has put in while Sai Deepak was keeping up with his legal profession. Because the first book he wrote while he was stuck in the pandemic. This one he has coped his profession, his professional commitments, and he has written a book that's bigger than his first book. So hats off to him.